A musician,
a long-distance kayaker,
a businessman,
she looks after animals,
artist,
author.
We interview remarkable people.
They're talented in so many different areas.
You're listening to The Dialogue.
89.7 FM Eastside Radio.
You're listening to 89.7 FM Eastside Radio. This is Natasha and The Dialogue Show, where I interview remarkable people. Today on the show, I have Garry Browne AM, CEO of Stuart Alexander and Co. Welcome, Garry.
Thanks, Natasha.
Now, we've had a wonderful little chat prior to this, and I feel like I know you pretty well. And I'm very excited about interviewing you. You know, I throw it out to my friends often to find me remarkable people, because so often it's not the people you see in the media who have done incredible things with their lives. Often it's people who, like yourself, are not that keen on chatting about what you've done. But you are the CEO of a, as you call it, I think it was a small, big business, which has brought in incredible brands that we absolutely love. And I'm going to say them and hopefully get them right. So it's Mentos.
Correct.
Fisherman's Friend, Guylian.
Correct.
And it's Chupa Chups and Werther's, and obviously a whole lot of other brands that you've brought in over the years as well. But these are loved brands that we have, and obviously Stuart Alexander is part of that process of bringing them to us. You yourself have been recognized within the business community in many different ways, obviously by getting this AM. And I asked you when we first met what the difference between an OAM and an AM is, and I think you were going to explain that to us.
Well, an OAM is an Order of the Australia Medal, and an AM is a member of the Order of Australia. And I guess it's the Order of Australia council that decide whether candidates are appropriate based on what they've achieved, whether it be in the community, whether it be in business, or their chosen profession. You've
been recognised across both business, community, and in other areas as well. So I'm going to take you back, like I normally do, to childhood, because we love to start in childhood, and realise that you are, I think it was, 5th generation Australian, born and bred in Sydney, all of which I find completely bizarre. I did ask if you came over with, as a convict family, and you said you might have. Is there a story?
I'm not familiar with too many of the stories as far as coming over with the convicts.
I love the idea that everyone came over with a convict.
It's a wonderful experience.
It appeals to me.
Well, I guess those convicts were specifically chosen by people of note.
Totally. And I mean, they built this fantastic country, so
Absolutely.
we have to be pretty grateful of that. Went off to school. Not a great school experience.
My parents believed that education was of paramount importance in terms of your future and your career. And whilst I went to a very good school, I had certainly experiences that probably were not ideal. Being told that I probably wouldn't finish school, that Year 10 was probably as far as I would go. That was subsequently disproved when I ended up getting an HSC and getting into a university course, which I've got to say was beyond my wildest dreams, having been told I couldn't achieve. And I guess one of the things that's come out of that is when people tell me I cannot do something, I damn well try very hard to prove them wrong.
I've always maintained that if you're dumb, you don't know you're dumb. So if somebody tells you that you're not going to make it, and inside you're ready to challenge that, you've got to believe that you're obviously brighter than they think you are anyway. You actually also did a stint at Harvard as part of business. So you went off and had that incredible experience, which we will touch on later. So you've had a very interesting. You said also a little bit of bullying at school. It wasn't that easy.
I was probably what I would call the ugly duckling at school. I really didn't belong to any particular group. I did stand out in the sense that I was the odd one out, and I guess that also formulated and formed my views of how I looked at life going forward. And that's all about really crafting a position that you stand out from the crowd in a positive way and do what you believe is right and try and achieve accordingly.
Interestingly enough, when nobody at school recognised that you had any potential, you've come out of that and you said to me that you think that you've been put on this earth to realise the potential of those that you touch.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a very generous and loving attitude towards people. You know, some people would come out of a school experience like that quite bitter, you know, quite angry. But it wasn't how you've tackled life.
No, and I think that those sort of experiences build resilience and strengthen your resolve to actually ensure that what happened to you doesn't happen to others. And so you do tend to look at trying to find the best in people and looking to help those that are less fortunate and those who just lose their way.
You're listening to 89.7 FM Eastside Radio. This is Natasha and The Dialogue Show, where I interview remarkable people. On the show today, I have Garry Browne AM, who is the CEO of Stuart Alexander and Co. You've done a lot of physical activity as an adult, triathlons. You know, we're going to touch on some of the other incredible things that you've managed to do. Were you like that at school? Were you quite sort of athletic or sporty or physical at school, or was that something that came later on in life?
So up until about the 15 or 16, year 9 and 10, I was probably a chubby, fat little boy.
That'd be ridiculous.
And really I was not being noticed. I had low self-esteem. And I guess talking about trying to craft yourself a position where people would recognise you, I took up running. And that athletics became my sport. And I chose to run the 3,000 metres, which basically no one really expected me to participate. But I was told I had a lot of stamina, and that started my career because I ended up winning that race when everyone thought I would come a last place.
Did you think you would come last?
No, I had trained heavily
You
and I prepared accordingly. And that took me on to marathoning, of which I represented the state and ran internationally. So that started me on an athletic prowess, and I retired early in the early 80s, and I needed something to keep me going physically, and triathlons and trekking and all those other things that I'd never done before I started doing.
You said that you had a coach while you were running who took on the role as a mentor for you. How did he do that?
So his parallels in life were all about focusing on being healthy, using athletics as a basis and of understanding yourself and the way in which you fitted in to the world around you. And those sort of disciplines were very, very strict. He was a strict disciplinarian, and in everything he did, regimented. He was out of the Navy, and so believed that there were certain things that you needed to do in life, and he transmitted that knowledge to me and many other young people who he mentored. And I have maintained that knowledge and that resilience and strength, the whole toolkit, as I like to say, that he's been able to impart to me, I've been able to use not only in business but with my family and life generally.
The business that you have, Stuart Alexander and Co., is, as you called it, and I'm going to keep going back to it, you said it's a small, big business because it's very personal. You have 180 staff in Sydney, and you turn over around about 300 million. So the 300 million makes you probably a little bit in the big business section, and the 180 probably in the small business section, because that's not a huge number of staff to run something like that. And the personal element is quite important for you. If I were to ask you what you find the biggest challenges within that business environment being, what would you come up with?
So I think the challenge today is to continue to keep people engaged, enthused, and focused on the direction of the business, and ensure that we can maintain our relevance as an organisation, because with a portfolio of 16 major brands, and one of the ones you probably hadn't mentioned was Tabasco.
Oh, Tabasco. I love Tabasco. That's my favourite. It's in my house all the time.
It's a wonderful brand, and it's been around since the late 1800s, so it's a well-known and well-recognised global brand. But in terms of making sure that our people are realising their own potential, their aspirations, their ambitions, 180 people across Australia, they all have their own ideas of where they want to go in terms of their career, etc. But you have to make sure you align them with the business goals and the strategic direction that we are on.
You're listening to 89.7 FM Eastside Radio. This is Natasha and the Dialogue Show, where I interview remarkable people. On the show today I have Garry Browne AM, CEO of Stuart Alexander and Co. We're talking about keeping people focused and excited about what they're doing and being able to think about themselves and their legacy. If I were to ask you what your legacy would be, what would you say it would be?
I think my legacy is probably my sons, in terms of the way they've grown up and the way their career is developing. And I think also where I've been able to touch people or help realise the potential of young people and organisations in everything that I do.
You came from a family that was very passionate about giving back, and that sort of has stayed with you. You entered Stuart Alexander at the age of 18. Your father started when he was 16, and you went into that business. You've been there for 40 years. It's an incredibly long trajectory. You've obviously been in lots of different roles. I mean, most people say don't stay in a job for longer than 40. You've had a couple of long service leaves along the way, I would imagine.
I wish.
So, given that you entered into that environment and that giving back is so important to you, the company itself, you've set up lots of ways for the company to actually support different charities. What's the most important aspect for you of that, and which charities are quite close to your heart?
So I think there are a couple of areas to focus on. One is that my philosophy and view is that having the privileges and benefits that I have, but also the company have, we realise our return from consumers, from the Australian community, and I think there are many who don't have those privileges and benefits. And so what we have decided through the foundation is that we try and direct that to those less fortunate so that we can balance things out. That's number one. Number two, how can we do it in a creative and innovative way that's going to inspire and excite our staff to not only engage with the philanthropic side, but actually will help them do a better job within the business. So there's that element that is important. And some of the recipients of the foundation are and have been, whether it be Young Care or whether it be the Smith family or Foundation National Parks for the environment, or whether it be Oz Harvest, which is a food
I've interviewed
collection.
Ronnie Khan actually,
yes.
on the show. She's quite an extraordinary woman.
She's a lovely person, a good friend of mine.
So, social element is really important for you, and giving back is really important for you. But you also striving and pushing yourself. You said, mind, body, and was it spirit? Soul. To push yourself in all of those areas, you said is vital for you.
Because I think as you get older, you really need to keep pushing the boundaries, because I think if you don't, you actually start dying inside. You have to continue to look for ways, new creative ways, to keep your mind active, keep your body active, and keep your soul enriched.
You went to Harvard and did, you said, an incredible course there. You had the most amazing experience. Why was that so pivotal for you?
I think I was able to spend such an amazing amount of time with extraordinary people who were like-minded and had similar challenges that I had growing up and developing a business that was a family business. And the learnings that came out of that, and some of those lecturers who were in that course were people who I'd studied their books and their learnings when I was at UTS.
Okay.
And so from that perspective, to meet those people was just absolutely incredible. I then used a lot of those learnings and experiences to translate and transform Stuart Alexander over the period of time from when I came back to really take the company to where it is today. Because I think that's one of the things that Stuart Alexander does so well, is it continues to reinvent itself. To be around for over 130 years...
It's quite remarkable.
And have the portfolio of brands, we all grow and develop, but we all have to remain contemporary and relevant. And today you will find, and I'm sure you experience all the time, that change occurs so quickly, whether it be through technology or through people's attitudes and ideas. You have to remain ahead of the pack and really stand out from the crowd.
One of the things that must be quite difficult in a business that's over 100 years old is being able to actually react and preempt what's happening within the marketplace. I mean, you've gone from a traditional business that probably started with very little competition into a situation where you have social media and technology that is changing daily. So has that been an interesting journey from a business perspective, moving what would have been a fairly static business for a long, long time suddenly into this fast pace? Very
much so. And so I think one of our strengths is our agility and our nimbleness to be able to act proactively, but also react a lot quicker than some of our competitors. A lot of our competitors are multinationals. We're an Australian organisation, and so locally we can make decisions a lot quicker than some of our competitors. So that in itself gives a lot of strength and makes us certainly competitive in areas where we need to be.
You're listening to 89.7 FM Eastside Radio. This is Natasha and The Dialogue Show, where I interview remarkable people. Today on the show I have Garry Browne AM, CEO of Stuart Alexander and Co. You're listening to 89.7 FM Eastside Radio. This is Natasha and The Dialogue Show, where I interview remarkable people. On the show today I have Garry Browne AM, who is the CEO of Stuart Alexander and Co. We talked about your active lifestyle that you have embarked in, and also the fact that it's linked to giving back. You do triathlons, and you have also climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. You have walked across the desert, the Simpson Desert. Mm-hmm. You have done some quite extraordinary physical tasks all around charity and giving. You've been involved in Peter Bain's Hands Across the Water bike ride. What compels you to do these physical activities that are really quite challenging and, let's be honest, dangerous?
Well, I think very simply it's the personal experience that I enjoy in partaking in that activity, the people that actually join it, but also that personal experience. I feel that if I've had that experience and others haven't had that privilege, I like to think that I can do something for those who haven't had the experience in a way that will be far more balanced. Yes, they are challenging, dangerous. I would say the risks we minimise, but in life there are always going to be some of these dangers. You just have to navigate and ensure that they're minimised.
You said that walking the Simpson Desert was very hard, harder actually than Kilimanjaro.
Correct.
Why?
So it was far more demanding physically for me. You are walking with 20 kilos on your back, 1,000 sand dunes, 2 weeks out in the middle of the desert. every step was the same as the last one, so nothing was different.
Boring. I would imagine there was
Monotonous.
exactly, that element of boredom would have been quite something.
Absolutely, and the people you had to talk to were only the 25 on that trek and nothing else.
Do you have any friends from that trek afterwards? I mean, did you bond with anybody?
I had a few friends beforehand, and yes, I've got certainly a few more.
Okay. Kilimanjaro, if I were to ask you what the most challenging thing about that physically and mentally was, what would you say?
The last day climbing to the top, you had to be incredibly careful because you climb 1,200 metres in 1,200 metres. So it's a very steep incline to a dangerous level of altitude. And I think you just have to be incredibly careful. But that to me was the greatest experience, but also the greatest concern, to make sure that we got up there. We only hung around for 20 minutes on the top of the mountain and then came down. But it was about keeping everyone together, because the last day was pretty rough weather.
Altitude sickness can obviously be quite debilitating. Yeah. Did you have people in your group that suffered from that?
We did, and we had to be very careful. And you've got experts. We had a doctor with us. We just had to protect those people accordingly.
What's on the bucket list?
The bucket list. Well, I actually have. Funny you should ask that, because only 2 days ago I started writing down that 2018. I have an important birthday, and I intend to do up to 6 different events.
Right.
And I hope to take a friend or family with me and ensure that those activities are going to be beneficiaries will be found for the funds that I can raise for all of those different activities, whether it be Machu Picchu, the Inca Trek, whether it be base camp at Everest. I'm going to be hopefully doing Peter Baines's bike ride, which is the 10th year anniversary one.
Fantastic.
And I'll probably do a 70.6 Ironman, which would probably be in Phuket, and maybe Kokoda. And there's one more, but that's I'm told a surprise.
Right. You say when you go and do the triathlons and the cycling things, you take a bike and you actually give that bike away at the end. You use it to help, drive support for the local people.
Correct.
What made you come up with that idea? I'm just going to buy this bike and then I'm going to take it over. I'm going to ride it and then I'm going to give it to some needy people. I mean, not everyone thinks like that. Most people think, I'm going to buy this bike. I like this bike. I'm keeping this bike until, it's rubbish, and then I might think about giving it maybe to my child.
Yeah, well,
it's the average thought process.
But it comes back to the experience that I'm having, as opposed to the tangible sort of item that I need to have. So I use it for the basis by which it's intended, and then let the local community benefit by having it auctioned locally for, and in this case, for the local underprivileged children that are in that community.
Your wife, Robin, and your 2 children, I mean, you were saying earlier that the reason why you didn't do Kokoda in the beginning was because you vowed that you would never be away for any of your children's birthdays. Mm-hmm. How do you balance that family with all the activity and the big business? What becomes the philosophy around that?
There's no doubt it's a challenge, and it's all about compromise. But I think one has to try and fight within yourself to make sure that you get your priorities in order. You're never going to get it 100% right, but you can work towards trying to ensure that you do as much as you can with those who are important to you. And there are times when you've got to make a decision and a choice accordingly. And I'd like to think that I've been able to balance that, and that my wife and sons accept the fact that I've made some pretty good choices.
Excellent. Well, you're still married, so I mean, you're in the odd group, Let's talk a little bit about Rotary and some of the business organizations that you're involved in. You told me that when you got married, your father-in-law wanted you to join Rotary, and you said, and the Masons, and you said, I don't have time, and you didn't. But then you actually got a call to an invite to Rotary, and Rotary's been a phenomenal thing for you throughout your life. What have you got out of it, and what have you, what's been so great about it for you?
There's a number of things. Firstly, it's been a wonderful personal development for me in terms of growing and learning and understanding how to engage and interact with people of all ages. The understanding and engagement in the community, the learnings that come out of it are quite incredible. But, Rotary helped me to funnel my mindset and give me that diversion from intense business activity. There is an amazing feeling, and I'm sure you've had it, and I'm sure many others have had it, of when you give to those less fortunate or those who really need help, how good does it feel?
It feels fantastic.
And I don't think there are enough people who actually understand or have experienced it, and that's what, certainly from a Rotary perspective, and what I've been able to do and what it's done for my family, I'll never be able to repay the organisation for what it's done for me. And its philosophy of service above self is so fitting, and I guess it comes down to the fact of learning and understanding that you are giving service to others, and in the end it will repay back in spades.
You've to date had a very interesting and busy life. Lots of wonderful experiences that you've pretty much set up for yourself. If I were to ask you, I believe everyone has this X factor, and I often ask people who come in here to be interviewed what they think their X factor is. That one thing that kicks in when nothing else does. That one part of your personality. If I were to ask you what it is, what is it? What is your X factor?
My X factor?
The thing that makes you get up and just keep going.
I think there are the one thing that's really hard to distill down is people and enjoying life and making sure that you capture every moment of every day, for you never know what happens tomorrow.
Absolutely. We've come to the end of the interview. I just want to say thank you so much for being so candid and sharing this incredible journey with me and our listeners. And I look forward to seeing what you do in the future, because I imagine it's probably going to be pretty amazing. So thank you, Garry.
Thank you, Natasha.